What's up, guys? I am a guy who loves behind the scenes stuff for movies that I'm passionate about, especially horror movies. So, per request, I'm actually going to share with you my top 10 favorite horror documentaries. Let's do this. What's up, guys? We're going to have a lot of fun with this one, actually. I got a request by John Ingold on Twitter and Derek Wheelrather from my Patreon page. And they wanted me to do a top 10 favorite horror documentaries. And at first I thought that could be tough to come up with 10, but then I realized I came up with 10, I came up with 13 actually. So I'm gonna give you 3 honorable mentions too. There's gonna be there's a couple franchises that you might see here, I guess a couple times, but they deserve mentioning. So anyway, 3 honorable mentions. First honorable mention is going to be this box set right here. And the reason I mention this is because there are documentaries for pretty much every movie in here, but brand new to this box set, which is out of print by now for the Halloween franchise. There are brand new ones for 4, 5, 6, and H2O. And then every other one they're pretty recent as well. So you can get them all in this. But I made this part of this because of those documentaries for 4, 5, 6, and H2O. Those are really great. They even got like Josh Hartnett to come back and do the one for H2O. The one for Halloween 6 is so interesting because they really talk about the producer's cut and the theatrical cut. This was the first time they ever released the producer's cut, which blew my freaking mind. But this is my prized possession as far as like home media goes. Nothing will ever top this. And if you would have told me that they would have put all the Halloween movies up until Halloween 2018, because this came out before that, together in a box set that's housed this beautifully, I would have called you crazy. Just because there's so many different studios and licensing and all that stuff. But Shout Factory was able to do it, and I got to give them kudos. It's amazing what they were able to pull off. And I actually have a video showcasing like all the stuff. It's one of my, in my first year of YouTube, so don't expect too much from it. But yeah, I love this freaking box set. Next honorable mention is going to be the To Hell and Back about Kane Hodder documentary that came out a couple years ago. That is a very effective documentary, actually. And surprisingly, it showcases Kane Hodder's like vulnerable side. This is a guy who was bullied when he was growing up. He faced some adversity. And it's just really interesting to see his story, going from this kid that was picked on to one of the deadliest looking stuntmen. He played Jason Voorhees for 4 movies. And his whole career is just very interesting. I talked to the guy for a good 10 minutes at Spooky Empire. As nice as horror celebrities are, and they all are really, really nice, he is like a fan. He's like one of us, and he will just sit there and chat with you for the longest time. And he was very candid. He was even telling me about, and I don't want to like throw dirt or anything, but he was just saying he wished Robert Englund would have stepped up and had his back for, the whole Freddy versus Jason thing. But if you ever go to a convention and you get to meet Kane Hodder, definitely approach him. He's so approachable. Next one is a documentary that I just saw, actually, called My Nightmare on Elm Street, Scream Queen. It's about Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2. And it's really about Mark Patton and his journey. And we get to find out what happened to Mark Patton after Part 2 came out. Because there was this void where Mark Patton was just gone. Nobody saw him until like the big convention circuits came out, and then Never Sleep Again came out, and they literally had to go and find him. There was no information about where he was, and they found out he was in Mexico. It's a very well put together documentary, actually. I learned some things about Mark Patton that I didn't know, and how tough this situation was for him. One of his partners ended up dying of AIDS. A lot of great information on this, but his ultimate goal in this is to really confront the writer of Nightmare 2 and just get him to admit that he wrote a gay script. Okay, now we're getting into the top 10. Number 10 is going to be the Michael Lives documentary off of Rob Zombie's Halloween, the 2-disc set. I think all of the releases of Rob Zombie's Halloween are 2-disc sets, but this too has Michael Lives, and the reason I put it on here is because it's 4 hours long. It's one of the most exhaustive documentaries I've seen for one single movie. I mean, there's documentaries that are 4 hours long, like Never Sleep Again, that covers the whole franchise. This is just Rob Zombie's Halloween, and it's so well put together. It's really the nuts and bolts of filmmaking. It's every step of the way, any embarrassing moments that happen, they're in there. You know, Rob Zombie doesn't like cut any corners whatsoever in terms of his documentaries. He likes to show every step of the filmmaking process, and I got to give him major props for that, because he definitely puts out the best documentaries out there. Even if it's a movie I don't like, if I see that there's a documentary on it, I know it's going to be good, so I watch it. But pre-production, production, all the way through, reshoots, everything, it's covered. It even says like day one, of everything. So yeah, I can't recommend that one enough. Number 9, The Shark is still working. It's on Jaws. It's pretty much on every release, Blu-ray release of Jaws. There's been quite a few documentaries. You know, one of the first horror documentaries that I watched was for Jaws, and it was for when I got the VHS, actually, back in the 90s, and there was a documentary on there, and Steven Spielberg talks about, he says, when I think of Jaws, I think of two things. I think of courage and I think of stupidity. I've always remembered that line ever since, and it was a very well put together documentary. But this one really talks about, the movie itself, but it also talks about like the fandom and why, I guess why The Shark is still working, why we're still so obsessed with Jaws, and why it's still one of the most effective horror films ever. There's even like directors like Bryan Singer that talk about how Jaws is like their favorite movie and they watch it like every year. Great stuff like that. Now, number 8, I think this is a tough one to find. One by One We Will Take You. This is the actual DVD release, but I love this release of Evil Dead because, the packaging here, it's just gorgeous. All that. But, I bought this because I already had the Blu-ray, but I bought this because I wanted that documentary, One by One We Will Take You. And I ended up taking the disc out of here and I put it in the Blu-ray. So I had it because I don't think it's available on the Blu-ray. I think the only way you can get that documentary is this, unless a new release has come out. But I just love this packaging too. It's gorgeous. But there's very few like full-length documentaries about the first Evil Dead. But luckily, One by One We Will Take You has all that great stuff, pre-production, production, all that stuff. Seeing Sam Raimi at such a young age directing this movie and coming up with all these creative filming techniques, it's all in there. Now, number 7 is the Terror Takes Shape documentary for The Thing. That is not the newest documentary. I think for the Shout Factory release, there were some newer ones on there. This is the alternate slipcover, by the way. But the Terror Takes Shape documentary is old, but it's still so informative. It came out, I think, like 20 years after the movie came out. So it's a little dated for us, but all the actors are there. They're talking about the experience of doing the movie. And I really love all the stories from like Rob Bottin, because Rob Bottin's a very interesting guy. If you can watch interviews with him, he's just a very likable person. He's got a magnetic personality, and that just makes documentaries and interviews that much more enjoyable. But one thing I like about it too is that even when the movie was being filmed, they knew that they were doing something special, and I think they didn't realize that it was going to be a flop when it came out. But they always strongly held to that feeling that this was a great movie. And I think they eventually knew that it would find its audience, which it did. And now it's considered one of the greats. Okay, number 6, second only to the Halloween box set, is the Alien box set. And I don't think you can get this one anymore. This is the one from the UK, but I don't like the Amaray case version. I don't really like Amaray cases unless it's just like single releases. But this one is beautiful because it has like the egg housing, and yeah, you can see it looks like an egg, the housing. But it's just a very well put together set. And when this came out, this was the first time the franchise came on Blu-ray. And each movie, all 4 movies, have very exhaustive, full, in-depth documentaries. The ones that I prefer the most are 1 and 3. There's a lot of drama that went on behind the scenes of the first movie, and Dan O'Bannon definitely felt like he was screwed over by David Giler. And, a lot of that stuff comes out. And it's always interesting when mud is thrown in these documentaries, and it's great stuff. So I've watched the first documentary so many times, actually, because it's just a fun watch. And then, of course, Alien 3, again, there's a lot of drama going on behind the scenes. Talking about how stressful of a shoot it was, how David Fincher was constantly having to deal with, you know, these producers just on his back. And, you know, talking about the assembly cut, but David Fincher had nothing to do with the documentary. He pretty much divorced himself from the Alien franchise. That's how bad it was for him on Alien 3. The only thing is he did give his blessing for the assembly cut, which is definitely my preferred cut, and I think it's an underrated movie actually for Alien 3. That is pretty much what he wanted, you know, his intended version for Alien 3. It's like 95% there. Okay, number 5, I mean, if you're a Friday the 13th fan, you gotta have Crystal Lake Memories. And this is insane. It's 7 hours long, and it covers all of the movies, up to the remake. Even the remake is covered on here. All the actors from the movies, you know, or some of the actors from each movie are on here. And it's one of those that, you know, it'll probably take you a couple days to go through it, but a lot of great stuff in here, actually. And you can tell that they used footage from one of the previous documentaries. His name was Jason, which that one was like, I think a 90-minute, and I have that one too. It's like a 90-minute documentary. But I jumped at the chance for this one. And I remember when this came out, there was even a bonus disc if you bought it directly through the company. And I thought I had the bonus disc, but I'm looking in here and I don't see it. So it must be buried somewhere. But the bonus disc was like even more interviews. But I mean, this really, it's so exhaustive. You know, it's a lot of information, but it's a fun one. It's definitely a good one. Number 4, I actually don't have this, but it's on the list because I used to watch it on Netflix all the time. The Never Sleep Again documentary for Nightmare on Elm Street. That covers all the movies. The one that I really wanted to see about was part 2 because this was Mark Patton's return. And if you watch that documentary, it came out a few years ago, and Mark Patton, he's kind of puffy in this one. You know, he gained weight and he was like embarrassed about it after. And Mark Patton's a really thin guy, you know? So it's kind of funny to watch this and see Mark Patton kind of blown up a little bit. But I actually prefer that documentary over the Friday one. I think the Friday one, as long as it is, it really covers a lot of ground that we already know, whereas the Never Sleep Again documentary, you might be surprised by some of the stuff you find out on each entry. But like I said, like it covers every movie in the franchise. Number 3, I almost put this at number 1. This is definitely one of my favorite documentaries on the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, The Shocking Truth. If you get the 40th anniversary edition, there's even a newer documentary on that. It doesn't even compare to The Shocking Truth, though. The Shocking Truth is pretty much what every documentary should strive to be. You know, you can almost feel the heat, the Texas heat in this documentary, and you know, the stress that went on behind the scenes. That's the one thing that they emphasize in this. They don't sugarcoat anything. They talk about the famous dinner scene and how they shot for, it was rumored like 30 hours straight. And it was just a very stressful shoot. And all of it's covered in this. It's so good. And I was actually born in the same month that this movie started filming. So it's always kind of held a special place in my heart. But we all usually watch documentaries once, maybe twice. There's only a few of them that we just constantly find ourselves watching. Shocking Truth is one of those for me. I've probably seen Shocking Truth maybe a dozen times now. It's that good. Okay, number 2, and as much as I just applauded that one, you know that the next 2 are going to be great, okay? Number 2 is 25 Years of Terror, Halloween documentary. Now, this came out in 2003. I found out about Black Christmas through this documentary. I didn't even know about Black Christmas until I watched this documentary. It covers everything up to Resurrection, and it's mostly panel discussions, but I loved it at the time, and I still love it because there weren't that many in-depth documentaries about the Halloween sequels. I mean, of course, the first movie has quite a few documentaries on it. This one covers all of them, and those panel discussions are very candid and very telling. And it's narrated by PJ Soles, but it's just one of those documentaries that I constantly find myself throwing in. It doesn't hurt that the franchise is my favorite franchise. And one of my recent friends, Dave Vanderhoff, he was actually at this convention. He says he's actually in the documentary. You can see him somewhere. But this also comes with like a comic book. If I open it up for you. Yeah, Halloween Autopsies comic book. Comes with a second disc. Because they trimmed a lot of the fat in the feature, but all the fat's still on the second disc, and actually that second disc is still very worth a watch. A lot of great panel discussions in there. And I remember the part 6 one, they're talking about how they don't think the the producer's cut will ever be released. So that kind of dates it because eventually the producer's cut was released. And then number one, my all-time favorite documentary is Last House on the Left. It's just hearing Wes Craven talk about the movie and the hardships and the controversy that went on when this movie was filmed, I found just enthralling and interesting. And you know, just the interviews with the actual actors that were on the movie. There's a lot of conflict between those guys. You know, there's still to this day a lot of drama behind the scenes of Last House on the Left. Wes Craven stated that he made this movie because he came from like this Baptist upbringing, and he just wanted to do something that really pushed the envelope and to really tell the dark side of life, because it's always safe and fun to make entertaining horror that's just like popcorn horror, but to get real and talk about subjects, you know, like rape that are real life, these are themes that need to be explored because that's art. Sometimes art isn't safe. So it's just a very well put together documentary, and it has a lot of interesting aspects to it. And I think the thing that sells me on it is just Wes Craven, you know, up until his death, you could tell he was haunted by this movie, and it comes across in this documentary actually. You know, talking about when it was released and them wanting to burn the film reel and all that. So really great stuff. I highly recommend picking up this Arrow release too. So there you go. Anyway, guys, that's 13 horror documentaries that I think are highly worth your time. Did I miss any? Let me know in the comments. I almost put The Exorcist on here. I was actually watching The Exorcist documentary today, but it's only like, at least the one I have, it's like 30 minutes long or something like that. Really some great stuff in there, but just because of how short it was, and plus I didn't really need another entry on here, I just, you know, cut it off at 13. But I do recommend that Exorcist documentary too as well. It's still very informative. Anyway, guys, be sure to come over to Killer Flicks, where we talk horror all day and every day, and on Fridays we do Free For All Fridays. Follow me at Drumdums on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd. Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day, and Drumdum out.